Hi there, welcome to my channel. On this channel, we're going to be solving Python challenges. And I want the videos to be largely unscripted and unedited, meaning that I know the prompt that we're going to work with, but I don't know what the challenge is actually going to be until we start recording the video ourselves. That way you can see how I work through the problem to try and solve it, and I do mean try to solve it because I assume there's going to be errors, debugging, and maybe sometimes I don't even solve the problem within a 10 to 15 minute time frame for the video, and we have to do some research and kind of just show the solution at the end. I'm hoping that this will accelerate my own learning for Python, but also help you to see that Python is a challenge. Programming is a challenge, and it takes a lot of practice and a lot of work, and you're bound to see a lot of errors and have a lot of mistakes. So let's get started. We're going to open our terminal here, and I'm just going to go to the folder where I have the prompt, and we're just going to open this prompt. So this is what we're going to be giving to ChatGPT or potentially Claude, depending on which one decides to work. So we're going to generate a Python coding challenge that is suitable for beginners. The challenge should be unique and creative. We want to get the problem description, the example inputs, outputs, constraints, and then we want it to be solvable within 15 minutes, clear, beginner-friendly language, and solution should demonstrate best practices. So I consider myself more on the beginner to intermediate Python user side. So because of that, we're going to start with this. We're going to do a temporary chat so it doesn't have all of my memory from the model. And let's see what we come up with. So you're creating a simple program to help a friend track their weekly expenses. Write a Python function called calculate weekly expenses that takes a list of daily expenses, which are floats, as input, and calculates the following: the total expenses for the week, the average daily expense, and the day with the highest expense. Return the day as a string, such as Monday. The function should return a dictionary with these values. So the constraints are the input list will always have exactly 7 values. Oh, we don't want to see the solution, so let's scroll up here. Representing the expenses for Monday through Sunday, the program should round the average daily expense by 2 decimals. If 2 or more share the same, return the first day, earliest in the week, and use the following names. Okay. So I think let's copy this. So this would be an example of what the input is, and we're expected to output something like this. Okay. So let's see what we can do here. So we've already got our directory created with our Git project. So we're just going to make a daily expense directory, and we'll just move into that directory. And I think from there, we'll open VS Code and we'll get started. So this is the challenge that we have. Okay, so I'm going to copy it in here. Turn that off. I'll copy it in here, and then it'll also be in the GitHub repo for this video, which will be in the description below. So if you want to attempt this challenge on your own, you can do that. I would encourage you to maybe pause the video, review the challenge text, and try to solve it on your own. I think that would be a great practice. And so let's begin. Let's see what we can get done in the next 10 or 15 minutes here. So I'm going to start by making a if name equals the main block here. So we're just using this calculate weekly expenses function. And it takes a list of daily expenses as inputs. Okay. So let's actually copy this over, and we'll use this same input here. So for starters, we'll break this down into pieces. So the first thing I think we want to try and do, total expenses. So before we do that, we need to pass the expenses into this, which will be a list of floats. And we will, from typing, import list. I'm going to do my best here to try and add things like type hinting and type of things like that to the code. I'm really trying to get better at doing that and documenting my code better. So I really want to make that a focus here. Let's call this and pass daily expenses. All right. So the first thing is we want, and actually let me label this expenses too, just for my own sanity here. So the first thing we want to do is total up all the values in this list. My initial thought is that we can do something like this. And we can just call sum on this list. But list doesn't have attribute sum, so we actually can't do that. So I think maybe another way we could do it, total expenses equals expense.sum for sum, or for expense in expenses. I don't think this would work either in this context. So let's think about this. I guess what we could do is we could do total equals, and we'll do 0 for now. And then for expense in expenses, we will do total plus equals expense. And then we will print the total. So that gives us 87. This works. I think there probably is a simpler solution here, but I think for now that will do. Okay. So the next one we need to solve for is the average daily. So average to do average daily expense. And let's think about how we want to do this. We already have the total. I think the way that we would get the average in this case is by taking the length of the expenses list. That would tell us how many values are in there. So I think the average daily, we could simply take the total and divide that by the length of the list itself. And I think that will give us the average daily that we have, which is 12.54. We've got 12.53. So we should do the rounding. We'll do the rounding here. And I believe it was rounding to 2 decimal places. So that's what we will do. And we get 12.54. Okay. So that solves both of these. And then the highest expense day. How would we go about getting the highest expense day? So I'm wondering if you can get the max, right? But then I don't know the positioning of this max. So I know that this is the max value, but I'm not certain where that max value is in the list itself. So I think because I need the index of the list, or essentially I need to know where that value is in this list because that represents the day of week, I may want to consider enumeration in this case. So I'm thinking about doing this. And I think we will do max value equals 0. And we'll do if expense is greater than max value, then we will do max value equals expense, right? And we will also max index. So we'll also try to get the max index, and then we'll do also max index equals index. Again, I think there may be a simpler solution to this, but this I think will work. So we're going to iterate through the expenses. We're going to get the index position in the list and the expense. We're going to look to see, is it higher than max value? If it is, then we're going to replace the max value with that expense. So ultimately, we should end up with the same 1825 value, but we should also get the index in this case. And then we can use that to determine what day of week it is. So let's print max value, max index, and we get 4, which is really the 5th position because it starts at 0, and 1825. So that's good. The only other thing with this, while we get the highest expense day, we don't really know the day of week itself. So we will do maybe a list. Sunday. Did they give us the values? They did. Okay. I say they, but really ChatGPT. So this is the day of week. So then using this, I think we can print max value and day of week max index to get the actual day of week. Okay. So that solves our total expense, our average daily expense, and our highest expense day. So the other factor for this is that we need to return this as a dictionary, but also let's look at this right here. So if 2 or more days share the highest same expense, return the first day, the earliest in the week. So I actually think the way we handled it with the expense greater than max value would actually solve for this. If we did expense is greater than or equal to max value, then we would overwrite the first entry of it and we would actually get the later day and not the first day. But this should give us the first day. So I think this will work just fine. All right. So now the goal is, let's create well, I guess we can just do it as a return. I was going to create a dictionary variable at the top, but I think we'll just do it this way. And we'll do total expenses is total. Average daily expense is the average daily. And the highest expense day is going to be the day of week. Oops, sorry. It's going to be the day of week max index. So we will return that, and let's give it a shot. So what we get is total expenses $87.75, average daily expense $12.54, highest expense day, Friday. So the output looks correct. Let's think about some things that maybe we could do differently. I think for starters, we should probably look to do. I can't remember how to do type hinting with a dictionary appropriately. I know it's a dict object from that, but it really is a string. I think it's going to be actually an int, or a float rather. Float string in this case. I do think we could probably come up with a cleaner solution here. I don't think I need to for loop through this. I just cannot remember. I feel like I should be able to use some on this, but I don't know. I'm at a loss at the moment as to the appropriate way to handle this. So we'll think about this for a moment. And then I think the only other thing is we could add a doc string to make it a little bit cleaner. Typically, I think for me, I maybe wouldn't do all of this in a single function. I would maybe do total in a function of its own, average in a function of its own, and then maybe day of week I would pass into the variable, and I would do this highest expense day as its own function. But I think in this case, this works out okay. Let's take a quick look at the solution that ChatGPT had for us. So if you're still working on it at this point, feel free to pause the video so we don't spoil anything. I see. Okay, so this is what I was thinking is you could definitely do a sum. I didn't think about this though. So you could do sum daily expenses. That makes sense. The average is the round total expenses divided by the length. Okay, so that makes sense as well. And then this is interesting. Dot index. So max, that's kind of cool. I did not know I could do that. So let's take a look at that real quick. So we can do expenses dot index and the max to get, hold on one second, let's go back and take a look. Daily expenses is the variable that's being passed in. Okay. So we got an error here. What did we do wrong? Oh, yeah, we did not type hint this correctly. That will be something I'll have to correct later because I can't remember exactly how to do that. Okay, so you can actually just do expenses dot index, which is a much cleaner and simpler approach. So I think that's really cool. And then this is unnecessary as well. So it's kind of cool. We can do total equals sum expenses to do just the expenses of the list. So great. We did find a solution as to how to do it, but it's always good to do some research and see if there's a more effective solution or maybe something that is more Pythonic or makes more sense. And I think that's why there's always room to learn and grow when it comes to working with this type of stuff, which I think is great. So very cool. I think that pretty much does everything we need it to do. So we have completed this challenge with some minor hiccups, which I think is to be expected and is not a bad thing at all. So like I said, this solution and the challenge and the prompt will all be on the GitHub, which is in the description below if you want to check it out. If you solve this on your own, feel free to share your solutions, or if you have any recommendations of maybe other ways that you could solve this, that would be really cool to hear. So share that in the comments below. I hope you found this helpful. If you did, consider giving it a like, and we'll catch you in the next video. Take care.